I was cheated on by my wife and my twin brother, so I recorded their betrayal, exposed them both, and rebuilt my life from the ashes, while they watched their worlds fall apart without me. Noah Carter didn't see the knife coming until it was buried in his back, figuratively for now. He stood at the threshold of his Seattle townhouse, rain-soaked and clutching a bag of Thai takeout, when he spotted the red jacket slung over a chair. It wasn't his, it wasn't Emma's. It was Lucas's, his twin brother's garish crimson calling card, a signal of chaos in Noah's carefully ordered world. At 38, Noah was a corporate strategist who lived by logic and routine. Black coffee at 6:45 a.m., pressed suits, a downtown office where he dissected failing mergers with cold precision. Lucas, though, was a wildfire. Kara's manipulative, a serial schemer who'd spent their shared life taking what wasn't his. Upstairs, Emma's laugh drifted down, soft, intimate, not meant for him. Noah's wife was an artist, introverted and quiet, her days spent sketching in their Capitol Hill home. 10 years of marriage had built a life of steady trust, or so he'd thought. Her charcoal-smudged hands and lavender scent were constants he'd relied on, a counterpoint to his grounded stoicism. But that laugh, it was the kind she rarely gave him anymore, and it was coming from their bedroom. Noah set the takeout down, his movements deliberate, his pulse a quiet drumbeat. He didn't call out, he didn't need to. Lucas's sporadic visits were a familiar disruption. Last weekend, he'd sprawled on their couch, pitching another doomed idea. Crypto meets green energy, Noah. $1 million potential, just need a little cash. Noah had shut it down. You still owe me $2,000. And Emma had chuckled from her armchair, calling Lucas. Noah had let it slide. Lucas was a headache, but he was blood. Blood didn't mean loyalty, though. Noah knew that better than most. Growing up in a cramped Tacoma duplex, he'd been the one who studied, who saved, who built a future. Lucas had been the one who charmed his way out of trouble, who borrowed Noah's science fair project in 8th grade and claimed the prize with a shrug. Twins share everything. Their mother had seethed. That was their history, a thread of rivalry stretching back decades, Lucas always undermining, always winning, leaving Noah to pick up the pieces. Now, standing in his own home, Noah felt that old sting sharpen into something new. The house was dim, the hum of the fridge a faint backdrop to Emma's laughter. Her sketchpad lay abandoned on the counter, a half-drawn face staring up at him, unfinished, like the life he'd thought they shared. Lucas hadn't mentioned dropping by, and he wasn't one for quiet entrances. The man lived loud, a parade of noise and bravado. So why was his jacket here, and why was Emma laughing like that? Noah's hand settled on the banister, steady as ever. He was a man who thrived on control, meetings scheduled to the minute, spreadsheets mapping every outcome. His colleagues called him a rock, his clients paid for his calm, but this wasn't a boardroom. This was his marriage, his brother, home. The strategist in him kicked in, calculating Lucas's presence, Emma's tone, the jacket like a flare in the dark. He took the first step up the stairs, his face a mask, his mind racing toward the truth he didn't want to find. Their marriage had never been loud, small gestures, unspoken rhythms. Noah liked it that way. He'd grab takeout on late nights. She'd sketch while he worked. They'd chosen no kids, built a life that fit like a tailored suit. But Lucas? He'd always been the loose thread, tugging at the seams. His charm had a dark edge, a knack for turning familiarity into a weapon. Noah had ignored it, brushed off the jokes, the borrowed money, when he hugged Emma goodbye. Family, he'd told himself. He's just being Lucas. The second step creaked under his weight. Emma's laugh came again, warmer now, laced with something private. Noah's grip tightened on the banister. He didn't shout her name. He didn't need confirmation yet. He'd get it soon enough. Lucas had crashed into his life too many times, but this felt different. The air was thick, the silence between the laughs heavier than the rain outside. Noah climbed higher, each step a countdown. He thought of the science fair, the $2,000, the countless times Lucas had taken and Noah had let it go. Not this time. The red jacket burned in his mind, a warning he'd missed until it was too late. Emma's studio was at the top of the stairs, but the sound wasn't coming from there. It was their bedroom door, slightly ajar, spilling that laugh into the hall like a confetti. He paused on the landing, his breath steady, his hazel eyes, Lucas's eyes, narrowed. Noah Carter didn't flinch in boardrooms or crises. He wouldn't flinch now. Whatever waited beyond that door, he'd face it the way he faced everything, with cold, surgical clarity. The takeout sat forgotten downstairs, the rain started up again outside, and Noah took the final step toward the unraveling of his perfect life. Noah Carter stood outside the bedroom door, the air thick with the scent of lavender and betrayal. He'd come home early, a rare break from his relentless schedule, his head pounding and his stomach sour from a day that had already gone off screen. The Thai takeout sat cooling downstairs, forgotten beside Lucas's red jacket, a beacon he couldn't unsee. Now, Emma's laughter spilled through the cracked door, intimate and unguarded, twisting the knife he'd sensed the moment he stepped inside. He didn't burst in. Noah wasn't built for theatrics. His hand hovered over the knob, steady, as his mind raced through probabilities like a chessboard mid-game. Lucas was here. Emma was with him. That laugh. It wasn't casual. He'd heard it before, years ago, when their marriage was new and her smiles came easier. The strategist in him cataloged the signs he'd missed. Lucas's lingering visits, Emma's softer tone around him, with the way she'd deflected Noah's questions with a sketchpad and a shrug. He'd been blind, and he hated himself for it. The door creaked as he pushed it open, silent as a predator. The scene hit him like a punch he'd braced for. Emma, hair loose, perched on the edge of their bed, her hand resting on Lucas's arm. His twin lounged against the headboard, shirt unbuttoned, that grin of his flashing like a warning. They didn't see him at first, too caught in their bubble. Emma's eyes bright, Lucas's voice low and teasing. "You'll never know," Lucas was saying. "Not unless we—" He stopped, head snapping up as Noah's shadow fell across the room. Emma gasped, her hand jerking back. "Noah!" "Don't," he said, voice flat, cutting through her like a blade, his eyes locked on Lucas, who straightened, the grin faltering but not gone. "Hey man," Lucas started, hands raised. "This isn't—" "Shut up." Noah's tone was ice, his face a mask. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The room shrank under the weight of his stillness. Emma slid off the bed, her bare feet hitting the hardwood, her sketchpad tumbling to the floor from where it'd been shoved aside. "Noah, please. It's not what you think." He held up a hand, silencing her. His other hand slipped into his pocket, pulling out his phone. "I felt sick," he said, each word deliberate. "Came home early, saw the jacket, heard you laughing, figured I'd record it just in case." Her face drained of color. Lucas's grin vanished entirely. "You what?" he barked, swinging his legs off the bed. Noah tapped the screen, and the sound of Emma's laughter played back, tinny and damning, followed by Lucas's voice. "He'll never know." The recording cut off. Noah's thumb hovered over the send icon, his gaze flicking between them. "Clara's got this now," he said. "Sent it 5 minutes ago while I was on the stairs. Figured she deserved to know what her husband's been up to." Emma's knees buckled, and she sank onto the bed, hands covering her mouth. Lucas lunged forward, fury flashing in his hazel eyes Noah saw in the mirror every day. "You son of a... You had no right." "No right?" Noah stepped closer, his calm a weapon. "You're in my house, on my bed, with my wife. I've got every right." Lucas froze, inches from Noah, fists clenched. For a moment it looked like he'd swing. Years of rivalry boiling over, but he backed off, chest heaving. "You're a cold bastard, you know that?" "Better than a backstabbing one," Noah replied. Emma's voice broke through, small and trembling. "Noah, I swear it wasn't planned, it just happened." He turned to her, and for the first time a flicker of something pained, been discussed, cracked his composure. 10 years, Emma. 10 years, and it just happened with him? He jerked his head toward Lucas. "My brother?" She flinched, tears welling. "I'm sorry." "Save it." He pocketed the phone, his movements mechanical. "Clara's on her way to deal with him. You two can figure out your mess. I'm done here." As if on cue, Lucas's phone buzzed on the nightstand. He snatched it up, his face tightening as he read the screen. "Clara," he muttered, then shot Noah a glare. "You've ruined everything, you know that?" Noah didn't blink. "You did that yourself." He turned to leave, pausing only to grab Lucas's jacket from downstairs. When he returned, he threw it at his twin's chest. "Get out. Both of you." Emma sobbed, reaching for him. "Noah, wait." He stepped back, out of her grasp. "I said out." Lucas grabbed the jacket, muttering curses as he stormed past. Emma followed, slower, her eyes pleading, but Noah's expression was stone. The front door slammed behind them, the sound echoing through the empty house. Noah stood alone in the bedroom, the air still heavy with lavender and lies. His phone buzzed. Clara, no doubt, but he didn't answer. Not yet. He crossed to the bed, staring at the rumpled sheets, the indent where they'd been. His chest tightened, but his hands stayed steady. He'd recorded them on instinct, sent it to Clara on principle. Surgical retaliation, no hesitation. It wasn't vengeance, it was justice. Lucas had taken from him one too many times, and Emma had let him. Now they'd face the fallout. Noah exhaled, slow and controlled, and walked out of the room. The game had changed, and he'd play it his way. Noah Carter sat in the darkened living room, the Thai takeout cold and untouched on the coffee table. The house was silent now, the echo of the slammed door still ringing in his ears. Upstairs, the bedroom door stood open, a wound he hadn't yet closed. His phone buzzed again, Clara's third call in 10 minutes, but he let it go to voicemail. He needed the quiet, the space to process what he'd just dismantled with a single recording and a stick. The first crack in his calm came when Clara's voice finally broke through, a voicemail sharp with fury. "Noah, it's me. I got it. I heard it. That bastard, my lawyer's on speed dial. Call me back when you can." Her tone was a blade cutting through the haze. Clara Morgan, Lucas's wife, was no pushover. Intelligent, assertive, the kind of woman who'd built her own career while Lucas chased pipe dreams. Noah had always liked her, respected her. Now they were bound by this shared betrayal, a bridge he hadn't expected to cross. He replayed the scene in his mind, frame by frame. Emma's hand on Lucas's arm, the casual intimacy of it, Lucas's half-bottomed shirt and that grin, like he'd won again. Noah's stomach churned, not from the sickness that had sent him home early, but from the weight of it all. 10 years with Emma, a decade of quiet mornings and steady trust, shredded in a moment. And Lucas, his twin, his shadow, had been the one to wield the knife. Blood and love, both turned against him. The front door creaked open, and Noah's head snapped up. Emma slipped inside, her eyes red, her hair damp from the rain that had started again. She froze when she saw him, clutching her jacket like a shield. "Noah," she whispered, voice raw. "Can we talk?" He didn't move, his gaze fixed on her. "You had your chance upstairs. You chose lies." "I didn't mean—" She took a step forward, then stopped as his expression hardened. "It wasn't planned, I swear, it was a mistake. Lucas, he kept pushing and I was weak and—" "Don't." His voice was low, lethal. "Don't blame him. You're not a puppet, Emma. You made a choice." She sank onto the edge of the couch, hands twisting in her lap. "I know I hurt you. I hate myself for it. But it wasn't about you. It was me, my head, my—" "Stop." He stood, towering over her, his control fraying. "You don't get to make this about your feelings. You laughed with him, on our bed. With him." The last word cracked, a rare slip of emotion. "My brother." Her sobs broke free, loud and messy, but Noah turned away, staring out the window at the rain-slicked street. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'll do anything, therapy, whatever you want. Please, Noah, don't throw us away." He didn't answer. Her pleas hung in the air, hollow against the reality of what he'd seen. Therapy couldn't erase the image burned into his skull, couldn't unsend the recording to Clara. He'd built his life on trust, hers, his own, and she'd torched it. "Get out," he said finally, his back still to her. "I don't want you here." "Noah." "Out." She lingered, her breathing ragged, then gathered her jacket and left. The door clicked shut, softer this time, but his thoughts turned to Lucas, the root of it all. Childhood flashed back in jagged pieces, the science fair, Lucas stealing his project, and the praise. The time he'd borrowed Noah's first car and crashed it, laughing it off. The countless loans never repaid. Noah had always been the steady one, cleaning up Lucas's messes, forgiving because that's what brothers did. But this wasn't a mess to fix. This was sabotage, deliberate and cruel. Lucas had leveraged their bond, their shared face, to take what was Noah's. The intimacy of it, Emma's laugh, her touch, felt like a theft deeper than money or trophies. Noah's phone buzzed again, and this time he answered. "Clara." "Noah," she said, her voice tight but controlled. "I'm done. Papers are being drawn up. Lucas is out of my life." "Good." He paused, then added, "I'm sorry you're in this." "Don't be. I should have seen it coming. He's been a snake too long," she sighed, the sound heavy. "You okay?" "No," he admitted, surprising himself. "You?" "Furious, but I'll survive. You?" They didn't say more. Didn't need to. Clara hung up, and Noah set the phone down, staring at the blank screen. He'd survived boardroom battles, hostile takeovers, sleepless nights crunching numbers. This was different. This cut to the bone, exposing a vulnerability he'd never acknowledged. He'd trusted Emma implicitly, her quiet presence a cornerstone of his world. Lucas, he'd tolerated, a flaw he'd accepted because of blood. Now both were gone, and the emptiness ached. He stood, pacing the room, his mind looping back to the warning signs. Lucas's jokes. "Emma's too good for me," and had always had a bite. Her laughter, brighter around him, had felt like a gift she withheld from Noah. The stolen glances at dinner, the way Lucas lingered when he dropped by. Small cracks Noah had dismissed as paranoia. He'd been a fool, blinded by routine, by the illusion of a perfect marriage. The anger came then, hot and sudden, but he tamped it down. Rage wouldn't rebuild what they'd broken. He crossed to the window, watching the rain streak the glass. Lucas had always undermined him, from childhood to now, a pattern so clear it stung. Emma had been the variable, the one he hadn't accounted for. Together, they'd shattered his trust, and he'd retaliated with precision. Clara's call-off, Emma's banishment, but victory felt hollow. Noah turned from the window, his jaw set. He wouldn't crumble. He'd dissect this piece by piece and find a way through. The pain was raw, the betrayal a double-edged blade, but he'd face it head-on. Alone, for now. The house loomed around him, a shell of what it had been. He'd start there, purging the memories, reclaiming what was his. Lucas and Emma could drown in their mess. He'd rise above it. Noah Carter didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen island, a glass of water untouched beside him, the house a silent witness to his unraveling. The bedroom was off limits now, its door shut like a sealed vault, but the images lingered. Emma's hand on Lucas' arm, his twin's grin, the rumpled sheets. His mind, trained to dissect complex problems, turned inward, slicing through the betrayal with the precision of a scalpel. He didn't cry, he didn't shout. Noah processed pain the way he processed a failing merger, methodically, detached, step by step. The clock ticked past 3, among the rain a steady drum against the windows. Seattle's gray night pressed in, mirroring the fog in his chest. He'd expelled them, Emma's tearful exit, Lucas's furious retreat, but the act hadn't purged the wound. It festered, raw and deep, a double betrayal that struck at the core of who he was. His wife, his brother. He leaned back, hazel eyes tracing the ceiling, and let the pieces fall into place. First, the anatomy of the pain. It wasn't just the act, though that burned, a visceral image he couldn't unsee. It was the violation of trust, the shattering of a framework he'd built over a decade. Noah thrived on control, schedules, strategies, outcomes mapped in advance. Emma had been his constant. Her quiet presence a variable he'd never questioned. Lucas, the wild card, he'd managed, keeping him at arm's length but never cutting him out. Blood was blood, he'd told himself. Now, that logic mocked him. They'd exploited his trust, turned his structure against him, and he'd been too blind to see it coming. He stood, pacing the kitchen, his bare feet silent on the hardwood. The strategist kicked in, reconstructing the timeline. When had it started? How long had they laughed behind his back? He thought of late nights when Emma stayed up sketching, her studio door closed, her excuses vague, lost track of time. Lucas's drop-ins, more frequent lately, always with a grin and a flimsy reason. Noah had been at the office, crunching numbers while they'd carved out their secret. The precision of it gnawed at him. How they'd used his absence, his predictability, as their cover. The warning signs came next, a parade of moments he'd dismissed. Lucas's jokes, sharp-edged and too personal. Emma's wasted on a stiff like you, Noah. Her laughter brighter with Lucas, a warmth she'd dialed back with him over the years. The glances, flakily, caught in the corner of his eye at dinners or holidays. Noah had chalked it up to familiarity, to the ease of family. Twins shared a bond, didn't they? Emma had known Lucas as long as she'd known him. He'd trusted that history, let it blind him to the shift. He stopped pacing, hands gripping the counter. Lucas's manipulation crystallized in his mind, a pattern as old as their childhood. The science fair theft, Lucas slapping his name on Noah's project, had been the first cut, a test of how much Noah would take. The crashed car, the unpaid loans, the constant oversteps, each a flex of power, a game Lucas played to keep Noah in check. This, though, was different. This was intimate, calculated, a strike at Noah's foundation. Lucas hadn't just taken, he'd invaded, using their shared face, their shared past, to worm his way into Emma's orbit. Noah's knuckles whitened against the counter. He saw it now. Lucas's charm as a weapon, his charisma a lure. He'd always been the louder twin, the one who drew eyes, while Noah built quietly in the background. Emma, introverted and artistic, had seemed immune to that flash. Until she wasn't. Lucas had leveraged their familiarity, the trust of family, to cross a line. Had he whispered doubts about Noah, played on her quiet discontent? Noah's mind spun, imagining the slow drip of manipulation, Lucas's voice, smooth and coaxing, eroding her loyalty. He crossed to the living room, sinking into the armchair where Emma had pleaded hours ago. Her words echoed. It just happened. And he dissected them. Nothing just happened. Not with Lucas. He'd seen his twin work a room, charm a stranger, bend people to his will. Emma wasn't weak. But she was human, and Lucas knew how to find cracks. Noah pictured it, late-night talks when he was at work, Lucas dropping by with a bottle of wine, a laugh, a touch that lingered too long. The intimacy hadn't been a spark, it had been a campaign. The pain shifted, hardening into something colder. Noah's detachment, his shield, held firm, but beneath it a current of self-blame surged. He'd missed it. He, the man who spotted flaws in billion-dollar deals, had ignored the fracture in his own home. His routine, coffee at dawn, office till dusk, had left a gap, and Lucas had filled it. Emma had let him. The betrayal was theirs, but the blindness was his. He'd trusted too much, assumed too little, and paid for it. He stood again, restless, and climbed the stairs. The bedroom door loomed, and he pushed it open, staring at the bed. The sheets were still askew, a silent accusation. He didn't touch them, couldn't yet, but he studied the scene like evidence. This was where his world had cracked, where logic had failed him. He'd built a life on reason, on trust in the people closest to him, and they'd turned it to rubble. Noah's breath steadied, his mind locking into place. He wouldn't drown in this. He'd analyze it, understand it, strip it down to its bones. Lucas's manipulation, Emma's complicity, they were facts now, data points in a problem he'd solve. The pain was real, a weight in his chest, but he'd carry it with the same discipline he brought to everything. He'd underestimated them once. Never again. He stepped back, closing the door with a soft click. The house settled around him, a battlefield he'd reclaim. Lucas had played his game, and Emma had folded. Noah wasn't. He'd unravel this, every sign, every move, and emerge stronger. The strategist in him demanded it. The man in him needed it. Noah Carter stood on the balcony of his Capitol Hill townhouse, the late morning air sharp with the bite of Seattle's spring. 3 days had passed since the bedroom door slammed shut on his old life. 3 days of silence, of pacing, of dissecting the betrayal until his mind ached. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening under a rare slice of sun. His phone buzzed on the railing, Clara's name flashed. He dodged her calls since that first furious voicemail, but this time, he answered. "Noah," she said, her voice steady but edged with exhaustion. "We need to talk, in person, coffee." He hesitated, his instinct to retreat warring with a flicker of curiosity. Clara Morgan wasn't a stranger. They'd shared dinners, holidays, years of navigating Lucas's chaos. But she'd always been Lucas's wife, not his confidant. Now she was something else, a fellow casualty. "Where?" he asked. "Fremont, that place on 34th, 1 hour." He arrived at the cafe early, claiming a corner table by the window. The space hummed with quiet chatter, the clink of cups, the hiss of an espresso machine. Clara walked in 10 minutes later, her dark hair pulled back, her posture rigid but her eyes alive with a fire he recognized. Anger, tempered by resolve. She slid into the seat across from him, a black coffee in hand, and met his gaze head-on. "You look like hell," she said, no preamble. He snorted, a rare crack in his stoicism. "You don't?" A liar. She sipped her coffee, then set it down with a deliberate clack. "I've spent 3 days tearing apart my marriage in my head. You?" "Same, different target." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared wreckage settling between them. Clara broke first. "I listened to that recording again, couldn't stop myself. Her laugh, his voice. It's like they were mocking us." Noah's jaw tightened. They weren't. They just didn't care. "Worse," she said, her fingers drumming the table. "I kicked him out that night. He showed up at my place drunk, rambling about how it didn't mean anything. I threw his suitcase at him. Literally." A faint smile tugged at Noah's lips. "Wish I'd seen that. Wish I'd aimed better." The levity faded fast, replaced by a raw edge. Clara leaned forward, her voice dropping. "How long, Noah? How long do you think they—" "I don't know," he cut in, sharper than he meant. "Days, weeks, months, maybe. I've been running the numbers, but there's no data. Just signs I missed." She nodded, her eyes narrowing. "Same. Lucas was always late coming home, always had some excuse. Client drinks, networking. I bought it because I didn't want the fight. You?" Emma stayed up late sketching. "Lucas dropped by more. I was at the office." He shrugged, a mechanical gesture. "I trusted them." "So did I." Clara's hand clenched around her cup. "Big mistake." They traded stories then, piecing together the unspoken signs like detectives at a cold case. Clara recalled Lucas's offhand comments about Emma. "She's got a spark, doesn't she?" And the way he'd linger after dropping off borrowed tools Noah never saw returned. Noah countered with Emma's sudden interest in Lucas's schemes, her questions about his latest pitch, her laughter at jokes that weren't funny. The overlap was uncanny, a map of betrayal drawn in hindsight. "He played us," Clara said, her voice low. Both of us. He knew we'd let it slide, me because I was tired, you because you're too damn loyal. Noah's gaze flicked to the window, watching a cyclist weave through traffic. Not anymore. Good. She leaned back, studying him. You're not like him, you know. Lucas is all flash, no spine. You're... She trailed off, searching. Old, he supplied, meeting her eyes. Steady, she corrected. There's a difference. The word landed heavier than he expected. Steady. It was how he'd defined himself. Husband, brother, strategist, until it all collapsed. Now it felt like a hollow label. He shifted, uncomfortable with the scrutiny, and asked, "What's your next move?" "Divorce," she said without hesitation. "Lawyers drafting it. Lucas can rot." "You?" "Same. Papers are in motion." He paused, then added, "I threw her out that night. Haven't spoken since." Clara's brows lifted. No begging, no tears? There were tears. Didn't change anything. She nodded, a flicker of respect in her expression. They sipped their coffees, the silence less strained now, a thread of understanding weaving through it. Clara set her cup down, her voice softening. "I keep thinking, what if I'd called him out sooner? Caught him before it got this far?" Noah's mind flashed to the bedroom, the recording, the jacket. "I've run that loop too, doesn't fix it. They chose this." "Yeah," she exhaled, long and slow. "Still stings, though." "Like hell," he admitted, the words slipping out before he could catch them. Clara's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "First time I've heard you sound human, Noah Carter." He shrugged, but the corner of his mouth lifted. "Don't get used to it." Too late. The moment hung there, fragile but real, a crack in their armor, a glimpse of vulnerability neither had planned to show. They weren't friends, not yet, but they were something, survivors of the same storm, picking through the debris together. Clara's assertiveness matched his calm in a way that felt... "You ever suspect?" she asked after a while, her tone careful. "Enough," he said. "You." "Too much. Ignored it anyway." She shook her head. "Stupid." "Human," he countered, echoing her earlier correction. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in days Noah felt seen, not as the betrayed husband or the stoic twin, but as himself, stripped bare by circumstance. "We'll get through this," she said, more statement than question. "Yeah," he replied, and he almost believed it. They finished their coffees, the conversation shifting to logistics, lawyers, assets, the practical fallout of dismantling marriages. It was easier ground, a place where Noah's detachment could take root. But beneath it, a bond took shape, forged in mutual pain and candor. Clara didn't need his protection, and he didn't need her pity. Just her presence, sharp and real, cutting through the fog. As they stood to leave, she touched his arm, brief but firm. "Call me if you need to, not just about this, anything." He nodded, the gesture small but enough. "You too." They parted ways outside, Clara heading to her car, Noah walking back toward his empty house. The sun was higher now, warming the damp streets. He didn't feel whole, not yet, but the ache was less jagged, softened by the hour with her. Clara understood, not just the betrayal but the quiet strength it took to face it. For the first time since that night, Noah felt the faintest stir of something like hope, not for reconciliation but for reclaiming what was left. Noah Carter signed the divorce papers with the same precision he'd once applied to corporate contracts, his pen steady as it carved his name into the end of a decade. 2 weeks had passed since that night. The jacket, the laughter, the recording, and he'd moved fast, hiring a lawyer the next morning, filing by the end of the day. The process was clean, surgical, a reflection of the man he'd always been. No kids, no joint business, just a house and a savings account to split. Emma didn't fight it. She couldn't. The evidence Noah had sent to Clara was a guillotine, and he'd wielded it without hesitation. He sat in his lawyer's office downtown, the Seattle skyline gray beyond the window. "She's waived her right to contest," the attorney said, sliding the final documents across the desk. "You keep the house. She gets half the savings and her studio equipment. Done by next Friday if the judge signs off." "Good," Noah replied, his voice flat. He didn't ask where Emma was, didn't care. She'd vanished after that last tearful plea, leaving a voicemail he'd deleted unplayed. Closure wasn't her gift to give anymore. It was his to take. Lucas's fall came louder, messier, a collapse Noah watched from a distance. Clara had moved with equal ruthlessness, filing for divorce the day after their coffee meeting. She'd texted Noah updates in clipped bursts. Lucas locked out, accounts frozen, he's begging. Then, a day later, He's crashed at some buddy's place, lost his job too, boss heard the recording. Noah didn't reply, but the news settled like a stone in his gut. Not satisfaction, not yet, just a grim confirmation of what he'd known. Lucas thrived on charm and borrowed trust. Strip those away and he was nothing. Word spread fast. Seattle's tight-knit circles, corporate, social, family, caught wind of the scandal. Noah heard it secondhand, colleagues whispering over lunch, friends texting awkward condolences. Lucas's reputation unraveled in real time. Clients ditched him, his latest million-dollar idea fizzled, and she'd gone for the jugular, claiming half his assets and full custody of their shared condo. Lucas was a ghost now, a man who'd gambled everything and lost. Emma faded quieter, a shadow retreating from the light. Noah pieced it together through fragment flating on the Musi, mutual friends mentioning her absence from art circles, her social media gone dark. She'd moved out of their townhouse that first night, crashing with a cousin in Ballard, then disappearing into a studio apartment no one visited. Her sketches stopped showing up at local galleries, her name vanished from the community she'd once loved. Noah pictured her alone, surrounded by half-finished canvases, her introversion curling into something darker. He felt no pity. She'd chosen this, just as Lucas had. Noah's life, though, held steady, fractured, but not broken. He worked late, burying himself in mergers and projections, the office a refuge from the empty house. Colleagues tiptoed around him at first, but he shut down their sympathy with a curt, "I'm fine." He was, in a way. The divorce was a transaction, the betrayal a data point he'd processed. Closure wasn't a feeling, it was a decision, and he'd made it the moment he sent that recording. He drove home that night, the papers tucked in his briefcase, the city lights blurring past. The townhouse loomed ahead, still his, a space he'd reclaimed piece by piece. He parked, stepped inside, and paused at the sight of Emma's abandoned sketchpad on the counter. It had been there since that night, a relic he hadn't touched. Now, he picked it up, flipping through pages of faces, hers, his, strangers, until he landed on the last one. Lucas, half skim, his grin, frozen in charcoal. Noah's chest tightened, but his hands didn't shake. He tore the page out, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash. The sketchpad followed. Upstairs, he stripped the bedroom bare, sheets, pillows, the mattress itself hauled to the curb. He ordered a new one online, delivery set for tomorrow. The act wasn't emotional, it was practical, a purge of contamination. Lucas's jacket was long gone, donated the day after. But its ghost lingered until Noah scrubbed every trace of them from the house. He didn't linger on the memories. Clara called as he finished, her voice cutting through the hum of the vacuum. "It's done," she said. "Judge signed off. I'm free." "Same here," he replied, switching off the machine. "Almost." "Lucas tried calling me today, sounded desperate. I blocked him." "Smart." "You hear from her?" "No. She's gone quiet." "Good riddance." Clara paused, then added, "Drinks tomorrow? Celebrate the wreckage?" He considered it, the first real pull towards something beyond survival. "Yeah, same place?" "Same place." He hung up, the silence settling back in. The house felt lighter, less haunted, though the echoes of betrayal still whispered in the corners. Noah crossed to the window, staring out at the rain-slicked street. Lucas's life was in ruins, marriage gone, money evaporating, reputation ash. Emma's collapse was subtler, a self-imposed exile. Noah didn't revel in it. He observed it, cataloged it, let it fuel his resolve. They'd pay their price, and he'd move on. He turned from the window, his jaw set. Closure wasn't a gift from them. It was a path he'd carve himself. The divorce was the first step, the consequences their burden. Tomorrow, he'd meet Clara, toast the end, and start mapping what came next. So now he climbed the stairs to the guest room, the only space untainted, and slept fitfully but alone, on his terms. Noah Carter woke to the sound of a delivery truck rumbling outside his townhouse, the new mattress arriving right on schedule. It was a Saturday, 3 weeks since the divorce papers were signed, and the Seattle sky hung heavy with clouds, promising rain but holding off for now. He signed for the delivery, directed the crew to haul the old mattress away, and set to work remaking the bedroom. Fresh sheets, a new comforter, a headboard he'd ordered online, each piece a deliberate erasure of the past. The room smelled of crisp cotton and wood polish, not lavender and lies. He didn't stop there. Downstairs, he tackled the living room, rearranging furniture, boxing up Emma's leftover books and trinkets for donation. The sketchpad was already gone, but her presence lingered in small things, a mug she'd painted, a scarf draped over a chair. Noah swept them into a cardboard box without hesitation, his movements mechanical, his mind clear. This wasn't about anger. It was about control, reclaiming the space that had once been theirs, now his alone. By noon, the house felt different. Lighter, sharper, a canvas wiped clean. He stood in the kitchen brewing coffee in the French press and let the silence settle. It wasn't oppressive anymore. It was his. The strategist in him saw it as a victory. Step one in a plan to rebuild. The man beneath felt the first stirrings of relief. That afternoon, he called Mark, an old college friend he'd let drift during the chaos. "Drinks tonight?" Noah asked, skipping the small talk. Mark didn't miss a beat. "Hell yes. You okay?" "Getting there." 7 p.m. at the Pine. "I'll drag Sarah along. She's been asking about you." The bar was a cozy dive in Ballard, all dark wood and warm lights, a far cry from the sterile office or the hollow house. Mark and Sarah greeted him with easy grins, no pity in their eyes, just the kind of normalcy Noah craved. They ordered beers, and the conversation flowed. Work, sports, a dumb story about Mark's dog eating a sock. No one mentioned Emma or Lucas, though no one knew they'd heard. He appreciated the silence on it, the way they let him breathe. "You look different," Sarah said after the second round, tilting her head. "Lighter, maybe." "New mattress," Noah deadpanned, and they laughed, the sound loosening something in his chest. He hadn't realized how much he'd missed this. Friends, connection, a life beyond the wreckage. Sunday, he dug into hobbies he'd shelved. He pulled his old hiking boots from the closet, dusted off a camera he'd once loved, and drove to Discovery Park. The trails were muddy, the air sharp with pine, and he walked alone, snapping shots of the sound and the jagged coastline. The rhythm of it, step, focus, click, mirrored the structure he thrived on, but it was freer, untethered from the past. He didn't think about Emma's sketches or Luke. He thought about the next ridge, the next frame. Back home, he uploaded the photos, tweaking them on his laptop. Nothing fancy, just a quiet reclaiming of something he'd once enjoyed. The images weren't art like hers. They were his, raw and real, a small stake in the ground. He emailed one to Clara, a shot of the lighthouse against a stormy sky with a simple note. "Progress." She replied an hour later. "Nice." He replied an hour later. "Nice." Monday, he signed up to volunteer. Habitat for Humanity, a weekend gig swinging hammers and building homes. It was physical, tangible, a counterpoint to the cerebral grind of his job. The first day, he drove nails into framing studs beside a crew of strangers, their chatter filling the gaps he did know. No one knew his story, and he liked it that way. The ache in his shoulders felt earned, a distraction from the deeper one he'd carried too long. Midweek, his phone rang, Lucas's number flashing like a warning. Noah stared at it, letting it buzz 4 times before answering. "What?" "Noah, ma'am, hear me out." Lucas's voice was rough, desperate, a far cry from the smooth charm he'd once wielded. "I'm in a bad spot. Clara's got everything. I'm crashing on a couch. I just need—" Noah's tone was steel, cutting through the plea. "Come on, we're brothers." "Any more?" Lucas sputtered. "You can't just—" "I can. I did. Don't call again." Noah hung up, blocked the number, and set the phone down with a steady hand. The line was drawn, final and firm. Lucas had no claim here, not on his money, his guilt, his life. The rejection wasn't emotional, it was a boundary, a wall he'd never let crumble again. He texted Clara after Lucas called, told him no. Her reply was instant. "Good. He tried me too, same result." A beat later. "Drinks Friday?" "Yeah." Friday came and they met at the Fremont Cafe, a ritual forming. Clara looked sharper, her edges honed by the weeks apart from Lucas. They toasted with whiskey this time, a nod to the wreckage behind them. "2 new starts," she said, clinking his glass. "A no more snakes," he added, and she laughed, a sound that felt like progress. Noah drove home that night, the house welcoming now, not a mausoleum. He'd purged the memories, filled the space with his own rhythm, coffee, photos, the hum of a life rebuilt. Friends had returned, hobbies revived, and volunteering gave him purpose beyond himself. Lucas's call had been a test, one he'd passed without flinching. Emma was a ghost, irrelevant. The pain still lingered, a dull echo, but it didn't rule him. He stepped onto the balcony, the city lights flickering below. The air was cool, the clouds parting to show a sliver of stars. Noah exhaled, long and slow, feeling the weight lift, not gone, but manageable. He'd reclaimed his space, his time, his self. Recovery wasn't loud or sudden. It was steady, deliberate, a path he'd carved step by step. For the first time in months, he slept through the night. Noah Carter leaned against the railing of his balcony, a beer in hand, the Seattle skyline a jagged silhouette against the dusk. It was late April, 6 weeks since the divorce, and the air carried the faint green of spring, new growth pushing through the city's gray. The townhouse hummed behind him, no longer a battlefield but a home, remade in his image. Clara's voice broke the quiet, drifting from the open door where she stood with her own drink, a whiskey neat. Nice view, beats my condo's parking lot. He glanced back, a half-smile tugging at his lips. Trade you. A chance. Their Friday drinks had become a habit, shifting from the Fremont Cafe to his place or hers, a rhythm born of necessity that had grown into something more. Clara Morgan stepped onto the balcony, her dark hair loose for once, her posture relaxed but her eyes still sharp. She'd shed the weight of Lucas's chaos, her divorce finalized a month ago, and Noah saw the same steadiness in her he'd reclaimed in himself. They weren't healing together exactly, just walking parallel paths, crossing where it mattered. She joined him at the railing, sipping her whiskey. Saw a house go up today, Habitat crew. You swing a mean hammer. Years of pent-up frustration, he said deadpan, and she laughed, the sound lighter than it'd been weeks ago. He'd invited her to the build site last weekend, half expecting her to decline, but she'd shown up, jeans work boots, ready to haul lumber. They'd nailed studs side by side, sweat and sawdust binding them in a way coffee never could. You're not bad yourself, he added. High praise from the stoic king. The banter was easy now, a thread woven through their talks. They'd started with pain, dissecting Lucas's lies, Emma's betrayal, but the conversations had evolved. Over beers or whiskey, they swapped stories of work. Her tech consulting gig, his corporate strategies, debated the Mariners' odds, planned the next build. Pain still surfaced. Clara's quiet, I miss who I thought he was. Noah's clipped, I don't. And tonight, she set her glass down, her gaze on the city. You ever think about confronting them? One last show out? Noah's grip tightened on his bottle, the question stirring a shadow he'd buried. Thought about it. First week I wanted to drive to wherever Lucas was crashing, break his jaw. Emma too, scream until she felt it. He exhaled, slow and controlled. Didn't. You not? Waste of energy, they're not worth it. She nodded, her silence a prompt. He kept going, the words spilling out more than he'd planned. Lucas called again last week, new number. Left a voicemail. I'm sorry man, let's fix this. I deleted it. Emma sent a letter, handwritten all apologies and excuses, burned it unopened. They don't get a say anymore. Clara's brows lifted, harsh. Fair, he corrected. They broke it. I'm done fixing their messes. He studied him, her expression softening. You're different, Noah. Not just steady, stronger, like you've figured out what matters. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of it. Had to. Couldn't stay in that hole. Me neither. She picked up her glass, swirling the amber liquid. I used to wake up angry every day, ready to claw something. Now? It's purpose. Work's good, the builds are good, I'm good. Same. He met her eyes, a flicker of recognition passing between them. Takes a wreck to see what holds. The truth of it hung there, a foundation they'd both stumbled onto. Clara's friendship had become a cornerstone. Not a crutch, but a mirror, reflecting his own climb out of the dark. She didn't push him to feel more than he could, didn't flinch when he shut down. He didn't soften her edges or ask her to bend. They fit, not as puzzle pieces but as two people who'd faced the same fire and walked out singed but stand. They moved inside as the air cooled, settling on the couch with a view of the freshly remodeled room. No trace of Emma's art, just clean lines and his photos framed on the walls. Clara pointed to one, a stark shot of the Sound, waves crashing under a bruised sky. That's my favorite. Raw. Yours too, he said, nodding at her glass, and she smirked. Touche. The talk turned to the future, tentative but real. Clara mentioned a project she'd pitched at work, a promotion in sight. Noah spoke of a hiking trip he'd planned, Mount Rainier, a solo climb to test himself. They didn't linger on the past. It was there, a saw they both carried, but it didn't define the room. Purpose had replaced pain. A slow bloom neither had forced. You think they're still out there licking their wounds? She asked, her tone curious, not bitter. Probably. Lucas'll charm someone new till it crashes. Emma'll hide in her sketches. He paused, then added, doesn't matter. They're background noise. Clara raised her glass. To foreground, then. He clinked his bottle against it. Foreground. The night stretched on, their voices low, the city humming beyond the walls. No romance sparked. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the potential lingered. A quiet what-if neither chased. They were enough as they were, friends, allies, two people who'd found truth in the rubble and built on it. Noah felt it in his bones. A rebirth, not loud or sudden, but steady, like the man he'd always been, refined by fire. Before she left, Clara paused at the door, her hand on the knob. If Lucas shows up, face to face, not a call, what then? Noah didn't hesitate. I walk away, no words, no fight. He's nothing to me. She nodded, a glint of approval in her eyes. Peace over vengeance, I like it. Learned it the hard way. She stepped out, the door clicking shut, and Noah stood alone in the quiet. He crossed to the balcony again, the stars clearer now, the city a tapestry of light and shadow. Lucas and Emma faded further, their voices drowned by the hum of his own life. He'd chosen peace. Not forgiveness, not weakness, but a deliberate turn from their chaos. It wasn't closure, it was freedom. He finished his beer, the cold glass grounding him. Clara's friendship, his rebuilt space, the trails ahead, they were his now, a life carved from the ashes. The pain was a memory, the betrayal a lesson, and Noah Carter was whole, not the man he'd been but the one he'd become. Noah Carter stood at the trailhead of Mount C, the early May air crisp and thick with the scent of pine. His hiking boots gripped the damp earth, a backpack slung over his shoulders, the weight of it a steady companion. Seattle sprawled below, a distant hum of gray and glass, while the mountain rose ahead, steep, rugged, a challenge he'd chosen for himself. It was a Sunday, 2 months since the divorce, and the world felt wider, less shadowed. He adjusted his straps, took a breath, and started the climb. The trail wound upward, roots and rocks testing his footing, but Noah moved with purpose. His mind, once a tangle of betrayal and calculation, settled into a quieter rhythm. Step. Breathe. Step. He'd spent weeks rebuilding. The house purged of Emma's traces, friendships rekindled, a life reshaped by his hands. Now, alone with the mountain, he let reflection take root, not as a burden, but as a lens. The pain had been a furnace, sharp, consuming, a double-edged blade of Lucas's scheming and Emma's complicity. He'd felt it that night, standing in the bedroom doorway, the recording in his pocket, their excuses falling flat. It had burned through trust, through years of routine, leaving him raw. But pain, he'd learned, was a teacher. It stripped away illusions, his blind loyalty to blood, his faith in a marriage that had quietly frayed. He'd been steady, yes, but too still, too willing to let cracks wide unchecked. Halfway up, he paused at a lookout, the valley unfolding below. Sweat beaded on his brow, his chest heaving, but he felt alive, more than he had in months. The lesson wasn't just in the hurt, it was in the growth. He'd faced the wreck head-on, divorce papers signed, Lucas cut off, Emma's pleas ignored, and built something new. Clara's friendship, the stoic strategist, had bent, not broken, and come out sharper. Lucas and Emma flickered in his thoughts, faint now, like static on a dying signal. Word had trickled back through mutual channels, Lucas bouncing between couches chasing another doomed hustle. Emma holed up in her apartment, her art silent, her social circle shrunk to nothing. They'd faded. Not with a bang but a whimper, their consequences their own. Noah didn't gloat or grieve. They were background, footnotes in a story he'd rewritten. He'd chosen peace over vengeance, a decision that freed him more than any confrontation could. The trail steepened, his calves burning as he pushed higher. Clara's voice echoed in his mind, "You're stronger now." And he saw it reflected in the past weeks. Their Friday drinks, their shared builds had anchored him. A bond forged in truth, not obligation. She'd moved forward too, promotion secured, a new condo in the works, her fire matching his calm, no romance, not yet, but a foundation that felt solid, open-ended enough. He reached the summit as the sun broke through, casting long shadows over the ridge. The view stretched endless, peaks rolling into the horizon, the sound glinting far off. Noah dropped his pack, sat on a flat rock, and pulled out his camera. He framed the shot, sky, stone, the edge of the world, and clicked. The sound a quiet triumph. This was his rebirth, not a loud declaration but a steady ascent, each step a reclaiming of what he'd lost and found. He thought of that first night, the jacket, the laughter, the cold clarity of his retaliation. It had been a fracture, a breaking point, but it had forced him to see. Trust was earned, not owed. Strength wasn't just enduring, but choosing what came next. Lucas had taken, Emma had folded, and Noah had walked away, not unscathed, but unbroken. The pain had carved him, the lesson had honed him, and the growth was his to keep. He stood, the wind tugging at his jacket, and took one last look. The city below was a memory, the trail behind a map of his climb. Lucas and Emma were gone, their shadows swallowed by distance. Ahead lay more hikes, builds, nights with Clara, a life he'd shape on his terms. He slung the pack over his shoulder, turned from the summit, and started down, the descent lighter than the rise. By the time he reached the base, the sun hung low, painting the sky gold. Noah unlocked his car, tossed the pack in, and drove back to Seattle, the mountain fading in the rear view. He didn't need to look back. Forward was enough. A trail blazed, a man remade, steady and whole under an open sky.